All right. When it comes to Battletech, there's an obvious way to play. You have eras, you have tonnage, you have point values, you have C-bills. There's quite a few ways to arrange a game of Battletech, and there's no real hard method where everybody just follows this one format. So in games of Battletech, you have quite a few options for you. But the thing is about Battletech, since there's quite a few options out there, is there anything more we can play with? Like you could just bring, 2,500 battle value worth of mechs and fight each other. But what stops one idiot from coming onto the field with, let's say, 7 locusts versus some guy who brings a mad cat? Because that can happen. You can have that kind of fight taking place. Well, here's something I was thinking about. Sometimes it's good to have additional format to your games. And that's just what I call it. It's a very basic term. What kind of format do you like to play Battletech in? And it's a term used in a lot of other games. But the fun thing is that Battletech is one of those things where if you want to spice things up, you can do a different scenario, or you can change how you play the game temporarily. Now, I've played Alpha Strike. I've played Classic Battletech. I have played all the different variants of Battletech, honestly. But there's nothing quite like having the same game and the same set of rules, but there's something about the way you play the rules makes it awesome, which is why I'm going to cover formats of Battletech. Now, I'm going to present just 3 I do. If you have your own format, by all means, make your own video, paste it in the comments, whatever you want to do. Battletech is the kind of game that's open to, hey, here's the special kind of rules we're going to run today, where we're going to play our specific kind of game. One I like that a lot of people have come up with before I did was the idea of the dream team. Now, there's a few ways to go about this, but the general plot I have for the dream team is pretty simple. In a dream team format, you're going to pick one of each kind of mech. You're going to have a light mech, you're going to have a medium mech, a heavy mech, and an assault mech. Obviously, the format you have for these kind of games is going to be based on a point value, where the battle value is the total of all the different mechs you want to bring. And it's pretty obvious that in various different dream teams, you'll have different point values, so they won't all be able to match against each other. Bringing these as stock would be a very different game as opposed to bringing a custom Stinger, a custom Griffin, a custom Archer, and a very tripped out specialized Atlas. So it's one of those things where with the Dream Team, the fact that you're formatting it to the idea where you have one of each class of mech means you're not going to have a thing where you have a lone mech out there. Since the format is based on having one of each type of mech, it's going to be relatively easy to have someone else who, as long as they have one of each kind of mech in their collection, congratulations, they can fit the bill. Now, it is possible you may want to run things a bit asymmetrical. Maybe someone's running clan mechs, and their clan mechs are stock prime variants or variants that have decent battle value. To match them with my dream team, I don't have to modify these guys, or maybe play ill clan versions of these guys versus whatever fine-tuned clan equivalents they have. That might work. That might be too much. But the idea is there's multiple different considerations in this format. You have to have the 4 mechs, and the point value, the battle value, has to match too. So you have those 2 considerations that stretch your brain in 2 directions. It's like, I can bring whatever I pretty much want, but does the point value support it? And so since you have 2 considerations, it makes it more than just filling point values out on a roster. You can't just throw in an extra mech. You have to have just the 4. So the brain has to twist a little, and the tactics suddenly become refined because you must use a 4 mech team. This also allows for very sportsmanlike games, and you can even set them up on a very sports-like table where you're essentially playing games of rugby with Battletech. So this is a plausibility. Then again, it's also a format I haven't thought of you may want to think about. Do you want to play a football team, rugby team, or whatnot using Battletech? It's possible. One format that I actually started playing with, and it's one that I don't recommend because it is potentially very unbalanced, is the Duel. The Duel is very simple to explain. You see, back when I was young, I only had one mecha. This is not it, This is a Timberwolf, a recast from one of the video game designs. But still, I had, in my first games, just one Mad Cat to go fight all these other mechs with. And I often ended up fighting Inner Sphere assault mechs, or I would face, of course, against other clan mechs in the heavy spectrum, and we'd fight out games that way. To be fair, it's easy to become very unbalanced in a duel because you have your mech, the other guy has their mech, and it's coming down to brass tacks. Now, you could be smart about this. You could use customized mechs that point value to a very specific point value target. It's hard to get your mech to get, let's say, 2,500 point value. But you could do a stretch from 2,200 to 2,650 and call it good. You see, that could work out just as well. Now, I actually am going to be doing something funny with my duels. I have this guy, which is kind of small for a mech, and I bought this guy. I thought I was getting a mech that would work with the rest of my collection, but this is the original casting of the Nova, the Blackhawk. This original casting, it's quite a bit smaller than the other ones that Ironwood Metal makes are about that tall and pretty wide, actually. So this guy's small. He's in the same scale as my original Timberwolf. I mean, the original Timberwolf wasn't that small. This guy is just a small mech in the original lineup. So I'll have a very small collection of duelist mechs that I can duel each other with. What do you know? They're all going to be clan, too. So, oh well. But that is also a format where you just take your one mech. Either you pick the same tonnage value or you have some kind of balance method where you just kind of batch all it and say, he's equivalent to that guy. Let's see how these guys fight out. Or you use, battle value, perhaps with pilot modifications, who knows, and just go from there. Duels can be really fun because it's just you and them. It's a boxing match. And technically, you could do a really shitty job of it. You could do a really good job of it, too, especially if you mixed up the terrain or you had certain specific rules, like environmental things going on, like desert or snow, or on the deck of a spaceship in deep space. That could be cool. Duels are an old format. It's actually, in my experience, one of the oldest formats because this was how I started playing the game. I just had my one Mad Cat, and I fought other people's Mad Cats, Atlases, Awesomes. I fought a Banshee, and it was pretty disappointing, actually. But still, these fighting, heck, if you're really good at it, you're taking down too many guys. Your next game, if I was playing a Timberwolf, it'd be kind of nasty if I came up against a Direwolf or a Masakari all of a sudden. So yeah, duels are a possibility. It's a really old format. You have your mech, they have their mech, and you just go to town. One thing I could also point out for duels is a possibility for all kinds of interesting things. You could bring just standard normal mechs like this Marauder. You could also do strange things if you and your friends decide upon it. Recently, we were through down with some Chad Cats. There's no way to describe strange upgrades like this, but this is legitimate. I mean, if you and your friends want to do really crazy upgrades to mech, put insane paint jobs on them and fight, duels are great for that because you don't have to make an entire force for it. You just make the one that fits whatever scheme you're going to, and kapow! Suddenly you're going. Suddenly you're there. I mean, it's legitimate. And you can do it in a duel format. Another format that I want to cover, and it's one that I want to go into because it actually has room for a lot of fun, but there isn't universal support for the idea, is the idea of Light Wars. Light Wars is something I'm overly prepared for in a lot of ways, but still, the concept I have is pretty simple. You play any mech from 15, if you can find one smaller than 15 tons, tell me. 15 to 35 tons, with 40 tons also possible, depends how you're running things. And you play point values that are closer to like 1,500 to 2,500, and that's it. The idea is you're playing with multiple light mechs on a team, and the entire concept is that you're going to be playing multiple mechs, and you're going to be playing against mechs that can pretty much get killed by each other. There's no big, fat, wood-chopping, fast-speeding, humongous assault mechs that take all day to kill each other. A locust is a pretty big threat to another locust, and if you stop and think about it that way. Also, my thought is that if you're playing Inner Sphere, you can play pretty much whatever you want to in that category. You can play stock, you can play modified, however you want to, tamper with the format. If you're playing with clan mechs, you want to back off from the 40-ton range, because honestly speaking, those guys become the assault mechs of this format. And if you're playing with clanners, you're going to start noticing that 30 tons is about as heavy as reasonable gets, and a lot of 35-ton mechs are pretty demonic. So this would be the setup for a clan player, whereas the other setup would actually work for an inner sphere player, just because a lot of their 40-ton mechs are pretty ridiculously stupid. So this is a concept I have. As I have said, I'm a little bit overprepared for Light Wars in some circumstances. I mean, this is even all the locusts I have, but it's all the ones that share this paint scheme. But yeah, this is the extreme of what you would see in Light Wars. This is probably a 2,500 point force as far as Light Wars is concerned. There are more reasonable things you'll find if you were playing a Light Wars format. And here we have logic and sanity represented. Here we do have one 40-ton mech, but it's a cicada. No reason to get tripped out over that one. The Hussar is relatively heavy. It's 30 tons? But it's so specialized and it only really carries one gun in its primary configuration. Locusts also are known for being relatively light on how well you can modify them, just because their tonnage is just very, very soft. They're a very specific mech. They are. Locusts don't have very much more they can do except for that thing they do, which is being fast, carrying a light weapons load, and being used with agility. They don't jump either, so like if you had a lance with spiders in it, it would probably do better than the locusts, just generally speaking. And of course you have the ubiquitous stinger. A stinger and wasp-filled lance would actually be a really good concept for Light Wars, as you have the flexibility of jumping. You have arms you can use, but you also have, your light mechs have various different loadouts that work pretty cool. So Light Wars isn't just the same thing all the time, because there's such a diversity of light mechs, and there's so many things they do. I mean, imagine an entire company for Light Wars based off of the urban mech. The urban mech has a whole different play style than any of the mechs you see here, and it would be legitimate. You could bring urban mechs in a Light Wars game and then get used to being surrounded because you're the slowest thing on the table. But that could be cool, because you also have the biggest gun. So when it comes to playing Battletech, there's no reason why I shouldn't screw around with the game just a little bit and play with different formats. I like the idea of having the standard game set in such an era with such a battle value, or even C-bill cost, where my forces play a historical event from the official timeline. But there's so many things you can do with these little mechs, customizations. Half of the fun of Battletech is that this game is kind of creatively balanced. I mean, if you have access to Solaris Skunkworks, you don't even need the math. You can have the computer do it for you. Although I have engineered some of these suckers on paper before, and they are crazy. I will be doing that in the future with an Aerotech fighter. I have an Aerotech fighter and a Lamb mech I want to design that I have to design by scratch. I'm not going to use the Solaris Skunkworks for it. But yeah, so here we have a bunch of different mechs that may not form a cohesive army, but they'll definitely be seen in a lot of different formats of play when they get a full paint job. It's a cool idea to have different things you can do to spice up and separate up the game. And you may have your own concepts for that. That's exactly great. Please do. Because the concepts I go with, the idea of dueling, the idea of having a dream team, and just playing with lights fighting each other, that's a very specific kind of game that I enjoy, that I don't force upon my friends all the time. But when we do have it, it stands out as being a special kind of game. If you've got some good ideas for Battletech that just involve, hey, let's play the game using this little format instead of just whatever, that's cool. Let's go ahead and do that. Now, just to make one thing for certain, I do all these formats in Alpha Strike or Classic Battletech. I haven't modified the actual rules of the game. I'm just playing with the rules of the game, but realizing the structure of how my forces are assembled and how the games are arranged can do a lot to spice up a good old game of Battletech. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.